Perfect. Perhaps just one, because we still have 3 minutes to get organized. Perhaps at the beginning, we can all switch on the videos. And while during, you can leave them on all the time. I think that's nice, so people see who they are talking to. And especially during the interview, ping pong. I think that will be really nice if everybody can see the interviewees.
This is the only moment that you will see me because I'm behind the scene.
Thank you for your help.
Well, nice meeting you, Cara and Roberto. Mucho gusto.
Okay.
Roberto,
¿podrías cerrar la
Gracias, que estés bien.
cortina más detrás? Porque así vemos su cara mejor.
Roberto, could you close the curtain behind you? Could you close the curtain behind you so that we can see your face better? It's my living room. No, not you. I'm telling Roberto. Roberto. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, I will close now my video.
So if everyone is ready, I think I will start a real webinar so people can start to come in.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to just wait 1 more minute to allow our colleagues some time to connect, and then we'll begin. Good. So, good morning and good afternoon and good evening. We have people joining us from all over the world, and I'm very pleased to have such a wonderful panel to share with you this morning. As you can see on this first slide, we have 4 speakers to share with you. My name is Kara Forster. I'm an independent consultant. I'm supporting the ILO and the European Microfinance Platform on this series of webinars about human resources management. And these topics are a result of the survey that the European Microfinance Platform's Working Group on Human Resources Development conducted last year. And so just to go over the agenda with you today, we're going to have an introduction from Patricia Richter, who is with ILO's Social Finance Group, and she's going to tell you more about the survey and what we learned from that. Next, we're going to have a discussion with the panelists, and we want it to be very interactive conversation, so we're going to have 2 separate pauses for questions from the audience. And so we are going to be talking with them about their strategies and practices to improve human resources management among managers that are outside the human resources department. And we have 3 wonderful panelists with us today. They are Roberto Rios, who is the credit manager at FUBODE in Bolivia, and also Ali, who is the manager for non-financial services and social performance in Majmoua in Lebanon, and Joy Santos, who is with ASKI and has been there since the very beginning, and she's based in the Philippines. So we have wonderful panelists, and this is now where I turn it over to Patricia so she can tell you more about the survey.
Thank you, Kara, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Also, a warm welcome from me, from the ILO Social Finance, but I'm also here today to welcome everybody in the name of the European Microfinance Platform and in particular the HR Action Group. Unfortunately, we don't have someone from the e-MFP joining today because they have a very important task to do, and that is a pre-selection of the winner of this year's award. So they have a selection committee happening today. So maybe one person will be able to join, but it's highly unlikely that they cannot do it. You have seen there are many buttons on the screen today in the webinar. And you have also heard in the introduction, we have a speaker from Bolivia. That is why we do have an interpretation function. So for all those of you who want to listen to the webinar in English and might not be able to understand Roberto when he speaks Spanish, at that point you can switch to the interpretation channel and the other way around. So if you are a Spanish speaker, there is English interpretation. When at the bottom of your screen, the interpretation button, you can click and then you have the option. So feel free to use it. It's there for you. With that, Kara, if you could click once.
Do you see it well?
Not yet. I'm still seeing the agenda.
Oh.
Yes.
Does it work now?
Thank you. It's there.
Right.
I wanted to give you a very brief introduction, and Kara already started. The European Microfinance Platform, for those of you who know, has different working groups. One of the working groups is focusing on human resources development, but why actually? In fact, we started this working group back in 2018 because we were convinced that human resources development as an integral part of good business practices is a critical success factor for MFIs that want to become or remain competitive and deliver to their objective. And when we talk of microfinance institutions, we do have that social objective there as well. So as a critical success factor, really, human resources development, human resources management. And this is why we started the working group some years ago. When we started, we wondered, well, what's actually this landscape of HRD practices? And we realized, to our surprise, there was no up-to-date landscape. And this is why we actually conducted a large-scale survey on exactly that topic. What HRD practices do microfinance institutions worldwide apply at that point in time? It became a large-scale survey. We received more than 300 answers, actually. At the end, we were able to use the input from almost 200 MFIs from 56 countries. I think this was really, really great in order to draw that landscape of current HRD practices in the microfinance sector. The full results are in the publication. I hyperlinked it here, so when you get the presentation after the webinar, you can click on it and can skim through it. One of the things that we saw was when analyzing the data, and the analysis followed basically the journey that any employee would have in a microfinance institution. So really starting from recruitment to development, training, performance reviews, up to eventually exiting. And we found out that most of the organizations that participated in the survey actually relied on the supervisors, on the managers to implement all of these functions, the performance management, the learning and the development. But what was not there was that the managers were actually provided with training on how to do that, on how to assess the skills and provide feedback and grow the employees. So only a third of these 195, almost 200 MFIs actually did that. And this is where we thought we need to go into a little bit more detail. And Kara, if you could click once more. So following the publication, we looked at some practices of selected microfinance institutions and created a blog that we titled, "We want our leaders to create other leaders," supporting the managers in their HR role. You can also have a look at that after the webinar. And Kara, one more click. Thank you. The reasoning behind why we needed to dig a bit more in there was simply because the managers are so crucial. They establish expectations. They identify the needs of the employees. They facilitate learning. They nurture individual potential and they coordinate teamwork. So they are also expected to be a role model. And they are supposed to motivate. They are also supposed to ensure discipline. So this is quite daunting. Huh? And if you are an operations manager, then this is only part of your job because you are actually still the operations manager. So this theme really appeared to be one of the most important one, where we need to get more practice shared, knowledge shared, and get going. It's the last input that I want to give as part of the introduction. And you can find this also in the blog. We kind of identified 9 types of resources that MFIs could provide to managers to help them to increase their ability and willingness to carry out such HR functions. And this is more information, what's actually there, to skills, to beef up their skills, to share values, to get them into dialogue also with the employees, but to also give them controls, to give them tools, make them be responsible for rewards, positive and negative ones, give managers time that they can fulfill their role. And you can also think of money. So those are kind of very briefly some types of resources that managers can be given to be able to actually fulfill their HR functions. We will hear much more and details from our 3 speakers later on. I want to close here with the introduction and want to move on to get you as participants going. Kara, if you could click once more. We want to have you roll up your sleeves. We want to hear from you. We have prepared some polls. And if you could start the first poll, just to hear who is in the webinar, which organizational type do you represent? If you could just quickly go through and click that we know who is here. You are the wizard now, because hosts and panelists cannot vote is what is popping up on my screen. So please let us know when answers have trickled in and you're ready to share the results on the screen. And it's a single choice, so you don't need to think so much. Great, thank you, Ayu. Super. So we see a little bit who is around. Yes, we have lots of MFIs, financial service providers. This is wonderful. Well, the other bucket is the biggest, but you will fit in somewhere, I am pretty sure. We also have industry associations. This is also always nice to have. Training institutes, training consultants. Nice. I think we have the right people here. And I'm also happy that we have investors joining, because definitely this is an area where investors can also support the MFIs that you invest in building this capacity of the MFIs to support the managers in HR functions. Thank you. So we have a good idea of who is here in terms of institutions, but we want to know, in which department do you work? That is the second poll. Are you from the HR talent or training department? Are you more from the operations department? Are you dealing with strategy? And if it is really something totally else, then only then click other. Again, the other is always the biggest bucket here. But when we only look at the others, this is nice. We have participants from all different departments, either from HR, training, from operations or strategy. This is a very nice mix. Now here comes the last poll. Don't be scared when it pops up. It's one where you can click multiple answers. The question is, just think of your day-to-day job. Is there actually an HR function that you are performing? So just give it a quick try. Are you involved in hiring, firing, contract administration, training, managing employer relations? Are you somehow creating or implementing safe work environments? Do you have the honorary task of handling disciplinary action? Or also involved in organizational development? You can click several answers depending on where you are in the organization, which department. It might be a couple of them.
Looks like most people have a lot of these functions on their plates.
So I don't see the results yet.
Yeah, they're coming in, and everything's
Okay.
between 40 and 70%, like on all the topics. So it looks like most of our participants really are responsible for most of these human
Right now
resources
I am
functions.
seeing it. It seems, Cara, that from Geneva to Geneva, it takes longer to transmit the results than from Geneva to you across the ocean. Now I'm seeing them as well. Yeah, indeed. It looks like everybody is pretty much familiar with all these different functions. I have to say, this is more than I expected. Perhaps one word here, I am seeing that I mean, from just the picture here, it looks like also a mix of administrative HR functions together with strategic HR functions. And I think this is nice to see, because if we only have administrative HR functions, it's a little difficult to really end up growing the employees and delivering on the social objective of the institution. So this link between the administrative and the strategic HR functions needs to be there to really make the organization grow and strive. And this is what I'm seeing here. And here you can hear those who were in the first webinar that was exactly on the strategic HR. You can see that we are diving a bit deeper now with this webinar moving forward. And with that, we have a bit of an idea of who is in the room. A lot of experience I can see because you all have HR functions. And I think, Kara, I hand over to you for a lively discussion with our 3 panelists.
Okay. Thank you. And now we will begin with our discussion, the guiding questions. And so the first one is, what human resources development functions do managers have across your organization? So I would like to invite Joy to go first, since she's the farthest away. I'll let her go first and just describe her answer to that question.
Okay. Thank you, Kara. Good evening from the Philippines. Good morning to other parts of the delegates here. I'm Choi Santos, Divina Gracia Santos from ASKI Philippines. So we are a microfinance operating for 35 years now with more than 831 employees. In terms of there you can see a brief information about ASKI. So I would like to give an overview. We are operating in 16 provinces in the central and northern part of the Philippines with 91 offices. It's more than 821 employees and 44% are female. So we're serving more than 137,000 microfinance clients with $31.9 million portfolio and a total asset of 34.7. So for 35 years, starting with the flagship of a microfinance, now we have 10 strategic business units, but still under the ASKI group of companies. And the biggest is the microfinance institution. So the question as to what typical HR functions our managers is doing in our organization. One of the key results area of our managers, regardless of their assignment, is HR management. And our microfinance managers and other department managers of ASKI performs HR management, including the recommendation of shortlisted candidates for employment within their area of coverage, especially that we have offices which is very far from the headquarters or distant places from the head office. So they recommend the candidates, but the final processing on the recruitment procedure is done through the HR department. Our managers are also responsible in the performance management systems for our new and current employees, or the current talent that we have. And in the performance management system in the branches, as one of their key tasks on HR management, they lead their team in goal setting and planning. And they start from the goal setting of clear expectations with the team, and then they move to planning and control to ensure that their employees, our employees, is aligned with the institutional culture and mission. And another one is they lead in direction setting for all the branch personnel for them to effectively deliver their key performance indicators, or the KPIs. So they also recommend the best scheme for rewards for our field officers. So they are like the channel or the link on the voices from the field, our account officers. They conduct performance review, assessment, and evaluation. And our managers is responsible in the continuous review and improvement of their direct employee. And those are mentioned in the poll a while ago. Our managers also in the branches and even in other offices of the ASKI serves as the direct link of our human resource head office or the human resource headquarters, especially in building the culture and leadership building for potential employees or potential talent for leadership position. And having this kind of link between our head office and the field staff is very helpful, especially to our distant offices or branches far from the head office. So our managers really need to embody the core values of the whole ASKI group. They also support the HR training department, training unit, and our own ASKI Training Institute in sustaining the development of the HR talent in their respective offices based on approved strategies on our human capital development for the whole ASKI. This is done by ensuring that the skills is continuously practiced down at their respective offices. Our managers are also responsible in the reporting of procedural or the legal employment concerns based on the requirements of the Philippines Labor Department, and also reporting of the non-procedural issues. This includes employee status, the family, employee transfer, updating of job descriptions, training report, and other employee concerns to the head office or to the headquarters. So the managers of our microfinance branches must always ensure that they lead the branch or their team personnel in defining a culture that will lead towards employee happiness oriented, but giving emphasis on performance, productivity, reliability, and accountability. And to summarize this, our managers' core tasks on human capital management include 3 very important functions, and that is leading, organizing, and controlling. And under the controlling, they perform a lot of tasks, which is the performance management and continuous evaluation. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you, Joy. That lines right up with what we saw in the poll, that many of the people who are joining us today really do have a wide variety of functions. I'd like to invite Alia to speak next. And just before I let her give her answer, I want to tell you a little bit about Majmoua. They are based in Lebanon, have 250 employees across 16 branches, and are serving 33,000 clients, about half of which are women and rural. And they have done a lot of work on the client protection certification. So they have met all of the indicators for achieving a gold certification standard in terms of responsible treatment of employees. So that's a wonderful accomplishment. And so we're very excited to have Alia here today to tell us more about how they achieved that and what that looks like.
Thank you, Cara, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. So actually, a lot of the things that Joy mentioned are common to what we are also observing in Majmoua. And clearly, we expect a lot from our managers, from identifying the needs for recruitment to support in developing and updating staff job description, participating in the interview process and the recruitment, providing feedback about the performance through the management by objective process, getting their input into developing proper incentive schemes or staff benefits, identify talented fast-track staff, identify the capacity building needs for our staff. And basically, what we've seen is that the moment we shifted to something that is called strategic HR, the moment we shifted from, we made the decision that we want to look at HR from a perspective of human capital development, it meant also that we increased the expectations at the level of managers and how much they can support with this HR function. And one of the things that Joy has mentioned, we also have those keywords that we expect from our managers. It's to lead, to motivate, to evaluate, to inspire. So indeed, it is a lot of things, but of course, we have to support them in being able to deliver all of those. And I think that also something that came out very strongly in Majmoua is empowering our managers to promote the core values of the institution, to promote the culture of our organization. And this allows them for this to flow throughout the organization across all positions. So yeah, very similar, a lot of points in common with Joy.
Thank you, Alia. And now I'm going to invite Roberto Rios to speak. So if you do not speak or understand Spanish, then please at this time go to the little globe icon on your toolbar and select the English channel from the interpretation feature so that you will be able to hear the interpretation of his remarks. Okay, so Roberto Rios is the credit manager at FUBODE, which is part of the World Vision International Network. And they have the mission to support their clients through financial services, holistic financial services, and low-income entrepreneurs, and to really improve the quality of life of the children in Bolivia in line with their Christian values. So they have 53,000 clients, and they offer a wide variety of non-financial services as well. So I'll just, without more introduction, let Roberto tell us about the responsibilities that his managers have.
Gracias. Buen día. Buenas tardes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I think that the microfinance industry is so competitive in this region that the human factor is the most important aspect so that we can be successful and so that we can fulfill our objectives. My institution has a people and culture unit, and this unit is cross-cutting along the organization. This means that jointly with the area managers, they are in charge of planning, as Joy already said, and Alia already said, management, development, and evaluation of the staff. But not only of the staff, but also the safety and the health of our collaborators or employees. All of this was born from the strategic planning that is done on a 3-year basis. In this planning process, managers visualize their future by conducting an evaluation of the capacity that we have, the resources we have, in order to see what will happen in the next 3 years. So this year, we can think about new branches. So we need the business units to have a certain number of credit officers. And if that is our objective, we do the entire planning. And we take ownership of this planning because each area manager, through this planning, knows what type of staff is coming in, how many are coming in, what skills, what competencies, what knowledge they require. But they also need to strengthen the staff so that this new staff that's coming into the branches are able to manage a high-performance team.
Thank you, Roberto. I think it's really interesting what you said about how in the process of planning the future of the organization, what you need to define is the requirements for people that will allow you to achieve that future. So, people being the key resource that will allow you to achieve this future that you've defined together. I think that's a really, very, very human resources centric, person centric approach that really fits well with what we've discovered through the survey and what leads to success. I'm going to just pause here to mention to the participants that as you have questions for the panelists, please use the question and answer function to submit questions, and Patricia will be helping us to channel those questions to the appropriate speakers. So feel free to ask your questions as we go along, and we'll pause in a few minutes to take some of those questions. For now, I wanted to go back to how does your organization equip the managers to effectively perform their human resources development functions? Because I think that, we've seen a wide variety of roles that these managers have to play. And so obviously the more different roles they have, the more support they need to be successful in all of those different roles. So Roberto, I'm going to let you continue since you just spoke, and go ahead and mention how you equip your managers to effectively really be able to execute those responsibilities that you just mentioned.
Gracias, Cara.
Thank you very much, Cara. I believe that each branch leader in Bolivia is in charge of about 10 to 15 people, and they need to have the necessary skills, the knowledge, the capacities to perform the functions. So each leader, branch head that comes to our institution receives training and induction, and they also receive information on how they need to prepare in order to lead a high performance team. And when I talk about a high performance team, what are the elements that the branch leader or the branch manager needs to have? They need to know that they are dealing with collaborators, people who have feelings, people who have fears as well, concerns. For this purpose, it is necessary to understand what is the purpose of a high-performance team and what are the values that need to be highlighted in this team. So they receive training in the areas of autonomy, rapidness, efficiency, and productivity. And they receive information on how they can promote autonomy in their team. Are they going to leave people do their job? And autonomy has to do with discipline as well. Discipline is nothing else than to comply with our procedures, policies, manuals, and everything that they are going to give our leaders so that they can fulfill their functions. But in addition, they should not only know what to do, they also need to understand the dynamics of the organization. These dynamics are linked to how I do the sales, how do I capture clients, how do I promote people. All these levels are going to allow each official or collaborator to have autonomy and not have these questions about how do I do this? How do I work? How does the system work? This makes the capacity of the team decrease. When I speak about how fast a team is, I mean that they need to be efficient in their work. If they are not efficient, I will fall short and I will stay more hours than the hours I've been hired to work. And then I have health problems. I neglect my household, I neglect my education and many other things. When I'm referring to efficiency, I mean how the collaborators and branch heads, advisors, account executives are going to appropriately fulfill their position. So I'm in charge of explaining to them how they do the different studies, what do I expect from the credits, what tools I have for the promotion of credits, the database, and everything is in writing. They have a tablet, they have a cell phone, and others. And I also need to understand quality. They need to be fast and efficient, but they also need to be taking care of quality. The regulator, the supervisor of the system, conducts audits or reviews of the quality and the process that we manage for the credits compared to our own policies. So they say, you have a certain policy. Are you fulfilling your policy? So quality is based on the training, on mentoring and supervision, accompaniment, and others. There also needs to be clarity. Although the official knows what to do and how to do it, they need to be clear about their objectives, about their horizon. That horizon is linked to the objective. Let's say this month you need to have certain number of credits, certain number of clients, services, insurance, everything that the entity can provide. However, if there are no goals, and these goals are not only supervised at the end of the month, we are going to have surprises. We are not going to be able to provide immediate feedback so that the high performance team can immediately correct. So I use intermediate goal supervision. I am going to stop there, although I'm excited about all these topics. Let's continue.
So we have, well, I think that really helps us define and see the many different things that these managers have to consider, right? All of the sort of operational things, financial performance, and HR. So that shows us the kind of scope of their responsibilities. Joy, how does that fit with your experience in ASKI?
Okay, hi again, everyone. Similar to what Roberto mentioned, we provide a formal training. ASKI has a training institute providing direct internal capacity development for our employees. So it is a separate institution from our microfinance, but still part of the ASKI group. And our training institute trains staff and builds their capabilities. So through this, we were able to build a pipeline of good candidates for the supervisors and other leadership roles in the whole organization. We provide formal training to our people also in terms of the legal regulations, because the Philippines Department of Labor has a lot of requirements and the managers need this to be able to handle labor issues that may arise. So we have a structured plan to build internal capacity, and this plan includes starting from the basic supervisory training of potential talents, potential candidates for leadership session. There is a separate session on human resource management. So the second one, which is part of the structured training, is they have to complete their attendance in all the leadership development courses, and they must qualify in the next leadership development program or the comprehensive management training program for our microfinance managers. So the training program, the management program for our managers, for the candidates for management, is composed of 1 to 2 weeks classroom sessions, 1 month branch immersion or application of lessons learned from the classroom session with key topics on credit management, financial and internal control, human resource management, so social performance management, networking skills, learning how to do the little resource mobilization, and even the community development. So after 1 month immersion or practicum at the branches as a management trainee, our candidates for managers will present in a panel with evaluation from the session facilitators. So once they pass the panel and the other review in terms of how they apply the skills, then they will be confirmed and they will be recognized as a full-fledged management trainee. So in terms of ensuring that our managers will look after the well-being of our employees, which is very, very important, they are also required to complete the first aider training as part of our occupational health and safety program for our branch personnel. Thank you, Cara.
Of course. Thank you. I think it's really interesting that ASKI has its own training institute. You know, that, and I think in talking to you before the webinar, it was clear that ASKI really invests in its people, and one of the through the basic training and then the comprehensive training. So really making sure that these managers have all the skills that they need. And I think it's a really effective strategy to have both the classroom and the field experience. So kind of building all these skills in the classroom, but also then providing a month in the field to shadow an established branch manager. And because of course, as people, it's so much more effective if we can learn by doing and watching and replicating that good practice that those experienced managers already have.
Yes.
Alia, how does what you've been hearing from your colleagues line up with what you've experienced in Al Majmoua?
Yeah, it definitely resonates a lot. So, and I think a first element, you know, for any position is that what we want is the right person in the right position. So it's all about having a set of criteria that we expect in our managers, then to go into for the people who are looking to take a managerial position, to be able to do a competency and skills assessment, so that we're able to identify not only their technical knowledge and their ability to grow in the role of a manager, but also their human quality, which will be essential in implementing their job. And once we pass this first test, then we go into a probation phase. And in the probation phase, very similar to what Joy was explaining, we would have a set of in-class classroom trainings that could encompass some technical core skills or some soft skills. Then we have this program of shadowing in the field, where we would pair the candidate for the managerial position with an expert, an established branch manager for at least a month, so that they can, you know, learn by doing. And after a cycle of 2 months, we would go into an evaluation of the candidate and to make a sound decision along with the line manager, the HR department, whether we feel that this person could fit for the position. So yeah.
Cara, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I think that's good. That brings in the aspect of a test, you know, and sometimes that can be structured like an exam, and that looks at their skills, and sometimes it can be kind of a more informal assessment of their soft skills, but having that evaluation of what skills do they have and what skills are they missing, so that then your skill building and professional development can really be targeted to their needs. I want to be conscious of the time. We only have 15 minutes left, and I want to leave some time at the end for the public to ask questions. So I want to actually skip to the last question, which I think is really interesting for our participants to hear, which is, what results has your organization observed after proactively equipping managers with the tools to support them in these human resources functions, because this is really the, I think, what will motivate other institutions to replicate your good practices, because you can, if you have seen results of this investment in people, then that is something that supports both your financial goals and your social goals. So let's start with Joy, and please share with us what results you have seen kind of at the organizational level from this investment in your people.
Yeah, I'm very happy to share our experiences on this last question, because our human resources, the rest of the other financial service provider here, they are the very, very important strategic partners in the delivery of the goals and the programs that we have. So by equipping our managers with the appropriate human resource management role, one of the very significant results is it increases staff retention. And increased retention, of course, of our employees in the branches and in the whole institution is cost efficient. Branch targets are delivered efficiently. The self-worth of the managers, which is very important as the branch leader increases. Thus, a strong motivational level of our employees are also reinforced. And since human talent is a very strategic partner in achieving the goals, and so the managers and their team members must always be involved in the review of the business strategy, the business plans, and among others, so they could be more committed on it. So another result that I would like to share is the strong commitment that we have seen that were built on our employees. Our founder, just to share very briefly, Mr. Victoria, who is present, the chairman of the board of our microfinance, has this strong belief in training and investing to people. So he really believed this even way back when ASKI was still a small organization in 1987. And during the expansion years of ASKI, in the early years of 2000, there are similar microfinance industry that would say to us that investing too much in the capacity building of employees was a waste of money. But now we are reaping the harvest of our employees development program, as we have many homegrown leaders. And the whole institution, through the governance team or our board, has this strong belief on having a homegrown leaders, because homegrown leaders have deep culture of the whole organization, and promoting from within helps with our succession plan program as well. So effective people management, in summary, really leads to success, both to our social and financial goals for the whole ASKI group. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you. Roberto, can you share with us the results that you've seen in FUBODE about from this kind of investment in your managers?
Bien. Pienso que algo cortito, el líder.
I think that these leaders who have people under their responsibility are in charge of generating the appropriate working conditions. And these working conditions reduce staff turnover. Staff turnover has been reduced up to 4%. And the retention is up to 6 years. And in a direct manner, the work of guiding leaders and having a high performance leadership and open leadership and integrating leadership, this allows our institution to have growth in our portfolio. We are close to 400 million. Second, the motivation and encouragement among the employees. It increases initiative and communication. I don't only speak, but I also listen. So these teams feel relieved from the pressure of this work that we have in microcredit. In addition to these factors, I also see that there's a succession in leadership. This work that leaders are doing results in succession of leadership. We already have leaders that comes from our grassroots employees. In addition, I can say that the volume of the portfolio has increased and it has become sustainable. It doesn't have peaks, sometimes 300, sometimes 500. But now we have 8 million Bolivians on a monthly basis. So the strategic planning has come from the general managers to all our employees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roberto. I think that is really, really interesting. That, you know, this investment in people, it really is an investment because you have seen that it has paid off in, you know, improved financial performance, sort of through staff retention, through efficiency, and through growth in the portfolio. And I think that will be really motivating for other microfinance institutions that may be thinking about expanding their approach to human resources. So thank you for sharing that. Alia, what have you found in Al Majmoua in terms of the results of the investment you've made in your people?
So very shortly, I think that one of the results we've seen is that for our staff, they understand that it's not the HR department who cares about the staff. Yes, they do, but it's mainly a cross-cutting thing. And the first person they would go to is their line managers. So it changed the culture and the approach. And by doing this, which is natural because at the end of the day, each employee will be in direct contact every day with their line managers. So there is this relationship that is being created. And it reinforces, as Roberto was saying, it reinforces a lot the leadership and the proactive role of the managers, who would start to understand in a holistic way how they can leverage human capital development. And it would be a win-win. It would be a win for the organization, but also a win for their employees, where it improves the retention of the staff, the loyalty and the commitment of the staff. It helps achieve the institutional and individual objectives. And I think that this came very strong in Al Majmoua. Plus the fact that it's really playing a very important in the whole positive institutional culture. And I would like to go back to one of the points that Roberto mentioned at the very beginning, is that yes, we are working in a very competitive environment. And at the end of the day, our main force is the human capital that we have. And those first liners, our field officers, loan officers, when they feel valued, when they have a good relationship with their line managers, where they feel they have a respectful and a good work environment, they are the ones who will make a difference in their work, in their daily work, and in promoting the organization.
Thank you, Alia. I think that's a really beautiful testament to the power of investing in people. You know, that it creates this positive institutional culture and loyalty. And really, when staff retention goes up, the efficiency goes up, and you know, the ability to achieve the objectives, both social and financial, is also enhanced. So it really is this engine for affecting in a positive way several different aspects of the organization. Well, at this time, I want to thank all of our panelists for their valuable contributions, and I want to open the floor to our participants to see if they have questions, because now is a good time for them to really be able to delve into the aspects of these of my colleagues' expertise that they may be wondering about. So let's go to Patricia and see what kind of questions we have from the public.
Thank you, Cara. We actually have 3 questions here. I am happy. Keep them going. One question is, how do you manage favoritism? So it's a very short question, but I think quite a huge topic. So maybe one of you wants to pick that up. How do you manage favoritism? Question number one. Question number two. How can we support the managers to take care of the uncertainties created by current crises? And here it follows first COVID, now war in Ukraine, what's next? So really this, how can we support the managers to take care of these uncertainties that staff have? And the third question is actually very direct, and it would be nice if each of you could give one answer there. What is the most important first step towards getting started to support the managers in the HR functions? So the first one, managing favoritism. The second one is how to support the managers to deal with the uncertainties that staff have due to crisis. And the third one, the most important first step towards getting started. And now there are more coming in. Perhaps we do these three first. There are two more waiting. Over to the panelists.
Okay. Thank you. So why don't we have each person give a brief answer, because I think that third question is really important for the people who are on the webinar today and people who may be listening afterwards. If I work in a microfinance institution and I want to do something like this in my institution, but right now we just have an administrative approach to HR, what do I need to do to get started? What's that first step that I do to take that transition to strategic human resources management and to really start prioritizing an investment in my staff? Joy, do you want to go first?
The first step. Hello?
I think you can pick whichever you want, Joy, whichever you want. We just need to make sure that we get at least one answer to each question.
Yeah, first is in terms of the very first step, it's very important that you, in the HR team, with the managers, with the line managers, it's very important that you were able to assess the competencies of your potential managers, because people management is not an easy job, and there are those who are very good technically. They could perform very well in the field. They could do financial analysis very well, but people management is something that you need, that the managers need to learn over time. So it's very important. The first step, assess first their leadership potentials, their leadership capacities, and be able to really identify if they are really matched in if they could really lead a team or not. That's very important. So in terms of favoritism in our institution, in the basic training that is provided for leadership development, that is part of the injected topic in each of the sessions. So at least they would be able to prepare, and sometimes it's very difficult to avoid that, and that could probably lead to some conflict or tension. But that's part of these skills enrichment training that we provide to them. And in terms of managing the uncertainties, in the past 2 years, the whole world had this very, very difficult challenges in managing the pandemic. And what we did is we provided psychosocial support in the form of the online webinars to our managers, and we made the continuous communication. The face-to-face is difficult, so what we did is we opened through the different virtual channels that we could to reach out to our managers, because they are the one that they need to be equipped, as they are the channel in defining a culture to our employees. So the first step is, of course, we have to make sure that they are equipped as well on managing these uncertainties.
Thank you, Joy. I think that your last response to the one about kind of managing uncertainties really links well with the research that SPTF has done on resilience, and that this psychosocial support and constant communication in the heat of the crisis is really a way to show staff that you care about them, and that really goes a long way to helping them navigate that crisis while staying with the institution and
Yeah.
offering support to your clients, because they also have to support the clients. So, you know,
Yes. Yeah, can I add a very, very quick, I forgot to mention that during the hardest period of the pandemic, we have a dedicated research department. So we've done a motivational survey for our employees, specifically for our loan officers. And through the motivational survey, it also helped us to really assess as well and evaluate the skills of the managers as to how they are doing in leading their flock. And because during those hardest period of lockdown, it's very important that our leaders are agile in responding to the uncertainties and to the crisis they have faced or they are facing during that hardest period of the pandemic.
Okay. I'll just, so that we can kind of touch on as many questions as possible. Alia, which question would you like to answer? Is there one of them that speaks to you more than the others?
No, I will answer very briefly on a couple of those, very, very briefly. So from where to start, I think once this decision, the strategic decision is made to consider, human capital development at the center of our work, it is first about looking at our HR processes and reviewing those HR processes and see what kind of involvement we want for our managers, which will directly impact, the review of their job description and what is the appropriate trainings that we need to develop in-house in order to support them in their new role. A second thing I would like to add in the related to how to support managers in times of uncertainty, and we've been facing this now for 3 years in Lebanon. The keyword is really going to be internal communication, transparency, being able to provide clear messages, a clear explanation of where we stand, what we're trying to do, that the managers would understand well, so they can themselves also feel more comfortable in having more information and being able to pass on the messages to the staff who are reporting to them. On the one of favoritism, it's a very interesting question, and I think that this also would happen depend on the context. The way we've been managing this in Majmoua is first through having it very clearly expressed in our code of conduct and ethics, which is clearly explained and signed by our employees, and it's one of the clauses that we don't have tolerance for favoritism, and this kind of misconduct, we consider it as a misconduct, could be definitely identified or reported through our policy of the open door. We have an open door policy where any staff could reach out to the HR department. They could use the HR line and report in case they have an issue, and this would be investigated, and it would be treated as part of our disciplinary processes. So in a nutshell, answering some of those questions.
Oh, I think that's great. I'm really glad you mentioned the code of conduct, because that's definitely something that's recommended in the client protection standards. That every institution should have one that really clearly defines acceptable behaviors, unacceptable behaviors, and the consequences of engaging in any unacceptable behaviors. So that's really nice. It makes it clear. Roberto, would you like to address one of these questions or give a brief response about any of them?
Sí, claro que sí. Pienso que esto del favoritismo.
Yes, of course. I think that favoritism, and what's the first step? We need to try to learn about the leadership from the leader of the branch. When we learn about the type of leadership, we can lead that person to an integrating leadership and open leadership, looking for different spaces. I don't know, role play, sharing somehow. This improves leadership. For me, the most important aspect is communication. Communication that leverages on tools. Because when a branch manager says that everything is perfect, people don't want to speak up, the head doesn't communicate. But if I meet with my staff initially and I use a methodology, there's a methodology that I like a lot, where I can identify with my team what is happening at this time, what I'm feeling at that time. I put on the hat of a certain person and I say, this is what I'm not doing correctly, this is what I'm feeling, and then I change it in a positive manner. And I ask them to suggest alternatives. And finally, I mentioned many things and I see dreams for the future. These dreams for the future become part of an actual plan where the entire team participates, and then I can get the support of a methodology so that I can learn what is the leadership that is growing, because I can have a transactional type of leadership, leadership that is focused only on the task. You have to do this or that. We have a case of a manager that has a natural leadership and everyone gets support from that leader. If we have this type of leadership, favoritism disappears, communication is flowing, and then we can focus on the objective and we are able to reach a better place at a better time. And for this purpose, we have an assessment of the team. This is something cross-cutting. The manager speaks to the head, to the advisor. And so communication doesn't stay with the branch manager. We can communicate with different people. But there's something of great concern for Bolivia. After the pandemic, we took all the measures needed to protect our staff. There was staff who worked. As leaders, we also came to work with all the necessary measures, supporting them, sending them SMS messages, sending them videos. Now there is high digitalization. I have employees who are in charge of the digital part, and I have new advisors who are new, who are fully digital. When you were speaking about how to support them, we need to have change management so that those who didn't know about the digital area can become digitalized. This is something that is great, that is helping Bolivia. There is great pressure to become fully digitalized. Assessments, tablets, everything needs to go digital. So we are supporting them in that. We need to have change management of the human resources so that they can face this new phase.
Thank you, Roberto. I think this idea of change management is an important one whenever there's something disruptive like the pandemic or even, the transition to digital finance and things like that. Because, last year it was the pandemic, but in the future it might be an earthquake, or it'll be political unrest, or there's always something coming. And so being able to address that through clear communication and constant communication with the staff and really letting them know that you care about them is, I think, a really important takeaway from our recent experiences. Unfortunately, we are over time, so I'm going to give it to Patricia right now, and just to let her summarize the last questions, and maybe we can continue this conversation offline because the questions are really interesting and the responses are really interesting. And so maybe we can collect some responses from the panelists to these last questions and circulate them over email, since we've gone over in terms of time for live discussion today. Patricia?
Indeed, we only reserved 60 minutes and we are already 12 minutes over. So I feel a bit like we need to close, which is unfortunate, but I do not want to miss going into some of the questions that at least they are in the room, because there were numerous questions now coming in. How do you retain managers in the organization, especially those with long years of service? And now, how do you, and this is very practical, how do you conduct training needs analysis for managers? What is the best way to build a robust training system in an MFI? Better to use existing supervisors or trainers that are not directly involved in operations. So we are really getting to some questions here that are burning, that are very practical. And then it continues. How do you monitor and evaluate the staff after you have conducted training to ensure that implementation actually follows? So it's a number of questions here. We do not have the time to go into them, which is really unfortunate. Kara, yes, let us try to get the answers from the panelists. I am volunteering you here. Thank you for accepting. That is one thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to add towards the end is those especially very practical questions. I think this is exactly the stuff for the action group of the European Microfinance Platform to discuss. How can the action group pick up these questions and support the industry in getting answers and tools out there? So if you still have more questions, please just type them in the Q&A, either they or there will be at the end of the webinar a survey popping up. You can also put these things in there. We will collect the themes, the questions, and then bring them back into the action group, and the questions will basically define the work program of the action group for next year or the year after. So that's kind of an offer in exchange for requesting that we kind of need to close. I see that Christoph Pausch of the European Microfinance Platform is also online. Christoph, thank you for allowing us to do the webinar with the support of the e-MFP. This has been super great. Thank you so much, all the panelists. I do want to at least allow you one last sentence or one last word, because otherwise this is really not fair to you, because you prepared so well for this webinar. Kara, perhaps we can do one very last round with one closing sentence or word to Joy, Roberto, and Alia, so that we kind of can close the webinar. And we know we have created lots of questions and thoughts in people's mind. Share your thoughts with us. The action group is there to actually pick this up.
Great, thank you, Patricia. I'm going to start with Alia because I saw that she had her hand up. So I'm going to give her the word so she can make any last comments or recommendations that she would like to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. So I think very excited to see that it triggered a lot of question, and we often see this where human capital development, there is a lot to learn and a lot to exchange amongst the practitioners. So my hands went up because there's a couple of questions that I would have loved to answer, and we'll be very happy to answer offline. And thank you again for calling for this round of different webinars on the topic of human capital development. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy, what would you want to say for your close?
sent in the chat, I will be very happy to share as well the structured feedback mechanism that we have in ASKI and how it is helping to balance the favoritism. But my last statement, it's very important that in the microfinance, we continue to help our managers to master HR management. It is a continuous learning process because our human capital generation, the HR generation, they are continuously evolving. Their needs and wants are all growing, especially the young generations of employees. The reason that we have to ensure that the HR management skills of our managers must be adaptive in responding to these changing needs, the global crisis, the pandemic. So it's very important that we always equip our line managers with agility. And that is very, very crucial. It will really help us to shape the future of our human resources, as it will also define in helping the microfinance in all the strategic directions and development program for the next years to come. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure to share. We will be very happy to respond to other questions through emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. I think that what you're saying really resonates with me. I did some research last year on resilience for SPTF, and what we found was that, you know, resilient organizations don't happen by accident. They're created by resilient people. So investing in, you know, creating agile, resilient staff and leaders is what allows you to have an organization that's resilient in times of change and crisis and disruption.
Yes, exactly, Cara. Thank you.
All right, Roberto, I'm going to give you the last word so you can give us your thoughts on the close.
Gracias, Cara.
Thank you, Cara. I think that we need to take care of our staff from the professional point of view, from the health point of view, the personal point of view, but mostly from the spiritual point of view. We are a Christian entity. God is at the core of it. We work for him. We are working for the benefit of our employees and for the benefit of the children.
Okay, yeah, I think that lines up very nicely with the work on resilience too, because one of the 6 components of resilience is health. And, you know, you really do need to look after your staff's physical, emotional, spiritual health so that that person is really able to give you their best. And that's what we're trying to do, obviously, with all of these webinars on HR, is really try to understand, how do we take good care of our people? How do we get them to give us their best work so that we can do our best work as organizations? So a sincere thank you to our panelists for all their hard work in the preparation of you know, leading up to this webinar. I really appreciate it. And we've learned so much from you, and we'll be following up to get your answers to a lot of these questions that had to stay in the chat box, but which we are very important and which we can work on together going forward. So thank you to the participants for joining us today. I know for some people it's very early or very late, and we really appreciate your participation in making this a global exchange of ideas. So please take good care and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.